Welcome to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's live streaming interview series, where leading new thought teachers, speakers, and authors share the intimate stories behind the 10 best spiritual books that inspired them the most on their spiritual journey. From well-known classics to hidden gems you might never have heard of, the No BS Spiritual Book Club saves you time and money by sharing reliable recommendations from those who've walked the path before you. The No BS Spiritual Book Club, the only no BS guide to the best spiritual books to inspire your own journey of self-discovery. Here's your host, founder of the No BS Spiritual Book Club, Sandie Sedgbeer.
Hello, welcome. Joining me today to share the stories behind the 10 books that inspired him the most on his life journey is Gavin Andrews, who, in addition to being the managing director for HeartMath in the UK and Ireland, is also the founder of a cool initiative called WeAddHeart, which is gaining momentum around the world, and the co-founder of a beautiful audio-visual relaxation app, which I'm very much enjoying, called Syntropy States. We'll find a bit more about that a little bit later. So a little bit of background on Gavin. 14 years ago, after a particularly challenging time in his life, he discovered HeartMath, coherence, and heart-paced living, which played a big role in helping him to heal from loss and to connect with the heart of who he really was. Since then, he's found joy, meaning, and purpose in sharing the science and the practice of coherence with others. Gavin Andrews, welcome.
Sandie, thank you. Thank you very much.
Gavin, tell us what this process was like for you of having to come up with 10 books to sum up, everything that's inspired you on your life journey.
Well, what was the process like for you? You had to chase me a few times, didn't you? I apologise for that. Yeah, it's well, you know what? It was really enjoyable. It took some thinking, actually. It really did. Partly because I have read quite a lot. You can see a bookshelf behind me, but yeah, and then there were a lot that I'd read that I had to sort of recall and go back to and dig off the bookshelf and flick through. But that was really enjoyable, and I relearned a lot of stuff, reminded me of a lot of stuff. Some of the things that popped up were particularly useful. I'm a great believer in synchronicity, and some of the things that popped up have a particular resonance in my life with some things that are going on right now. So I'm delighted that you asked me to do it, and I apologise it took me a little while. But it was fun writing it, actually. Yeah.
Good. I mean, you said that you've always been interested in, the existential questions, even as a kid. Yeah. But it wasn't until you lost your first wife to breast cancer in your early 30s that you began to spend more of your time seeking out different answers. Were most of these books in your life after you lost your wife, or had you read some of them before?
Some of them before. Quick scan of them all, actually. But in fact, probably the majority of them before. Yeah. But I subsequently reread some of these around that time, or the year or two following, and they were very helpful to me. But there's a few on the list which are more recent ones as well. Yeah, but many of them I'd read before.
What were you doing for a living before you lost your wife and before you discovered the road that led you to HeartMath and heart coherence?
I was in the rat race. I was in the corporate world. I was working in media, worked for a number of media organisations. I know your background is media as well. The last job I had actually was I worked for The Guardian, and I worked in the sort of commercial side, advertising and promotion and marketing, sales, that type of stuff. And it was. It was my life. I didn't really know anything different at the time. They were a nice company to work for. There was a lot of very intelligent, smart, fun people around, but it wasn't really who I was, Sandie. And waking up as a result of losing somebody I loved was what set me on this new path. So I consider that to have been, useful in kind of creating some of the skills that maybe I use now, but that's a closed chapter, that world. And I'm probably unemployable now, actually, but I can't really see myself ever going back into the sort of mainstream world of work, the corporate world.
Yeah, I think many of us are unemployable now, and that seems to follow once people do do find a spiritual path, that journey of discovery, personal discovery, leads you to places that, you can't go back from.
Very
you can't
true.
unknow what you know, can you?
Exactly.
Yeah. So let's talk about your books. And you say that they had a profound impact. They opened your heart and mind and helped you to explore your potential, purpose and passion. Well, the first one is one that comes from, you were just 7 years old. I don't know if you thought about potential and purpose and passion then, but it was Life on Earth by David Attenborough, published in 1979.
Yes. So this was an interesting outcome of you asking me to do this, as I realized that there are a number of books I'd read that at the time I certainly didn't consider they were spiritual, didn't even know what it meant. But yeah, Life on Earth, as a 7-year-old, I was just addicted to the TV show. And I received the book for my Christmas present, actually, from my parents. And I just spent the next year or two just deeply engaged in this book and looking at all the pictures and reading about everything. And so, yeah, for me, it was all about just the awe and the wonder of our world and like the incredible diversity of life that we got, the variety of life that we have, the miracle of it all. Like, how on earth did this all appear on a great big rock that was just devoid of all life at one point, and then there's virtually every centimeter of it now is covered with life. And so yeah, I was just amazed by it all, and I loved the TV show. And for me, that's when I started to sort of think, well, there's got to be some sort of intelligence or purpose behind all of this. But I didn't know anything about theories of evolution and different belief systems like materialism or idealism or whatever. But yeah, I can recall thinking that like this got here for a reason. It wasn't just chance. And I think as well, probably this is where I got interested in sort of the scientific side of it as well, because obviously that's coming from a biological perspective, an evolutionary perspective, and I was interested in all of that. But really, it was about just the awe at the magnificence of this planet that we live on and the incredible diversity of all the life on it.
Would you say that really kind of created a thirst in you to know an awful lot more about nature and life? And
yeah, definitely. I mean, some of the other books that I was really into at that time were books on dinosaurs and things. I was really interested to know, like, okay, what came before us, and sort of some of the pre-humans and stuff. My parents also gave me this book called The Last 1 Million Years, and I was sort of flicking through this massive tome, which was this wonderful picture of the history of literally the last 1,000,000 years. And I just love all of that stuff. Yeah, I just find it fascinating.
So really there's a connection there, I think, with your next book, which is Jonathan Livingston's Seagull by Seagull by Richard Bach, published in 1970. And you say that you read that when you were in your teens. But I mean, when you think about, Jonathan the Seagull flying free, and, the vistas and everything that Jonathan experienced, I can see a parallel there between the first book and this.
Yeah, there is definitely, and around a kind of consciousness, I guess, and an intelligence. And for me, that book's about an evolution of consciousness, not just about sort of biological evolution.
Yes.
And yeah, I read that in my teens. That was the first proper spiritual book that I ever read. And it's funny, if I read it because a friend of mine recommended it to me, who was like the least, in hindsight, least spiritual person ever. But he read this book and he said, "Oh man, you've got to read this. It's incredible." And he sort of waved the copy at me and thought, well, that looks just like a crappy little pamphlet for a start, with some terrible pictures on it, because there's fairly terrible images of seagulls. But then I read it and it just instantly resonated with me. And the metaphor of the seagull who looks around him and sees kind of like the chaos and squawking of the flock, fighting each other and feeding and diving on the scraps from the fishing boat, and just sort of like really a life of survival and one with very little purpose. And I saw some parallels with the world around, and then this idea of the seagull who sees and experiences that things could be different, and then decides to not spend his time fighting everyone else for the scraps, but perfecting his flight, and dedicating all his time and energy to doing that, and actually moving away from the flock, the others, becoming a bit of an outsider, actually laughed at by the others. I just identified, and I thought, I think I'd be like Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Actually, this is making a bit of sense to me, and so that then set me on the path of choosing books that would enlighten me, open up my mind to different perspectives and beliefs and ideas and philosophies. And really, I think helped me understand that a lot of the things that I believed were not really choices of mine, that they were just things that I'd assumed because I'd been told that they were correct by family, friends, society, culture, religion, whatever, and that started me on that question of, well, why? Is that really the truth? Is that the only truth? Who says? It stuck with me.
You say that in hindsight, I mean, there was an early lesson there that knowing is not the same as being or doing. Knowing something without integrating it and acting on it is largely hollow.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't integrate what I had learned. It resonated with me for a short period. Well, some of the ideas may have stuck with me, but I didn't really do anything about it. And then, sure enough, I just got caught up again in the shouldings of life, and this is what you do. You get an education, and then you try and work out what you want to do next, and then you choose something that you think is going to give you a good job, and then you go and do that, and then you jump through that hurdle, and then you get on the corporate ladder, and then you try and work your way up the all of that stuff. I fell back into that trap and didn't really question a lot of that stuff, and so I wasn't connected to my heart significantly at that point in my life.
Yeah. And it was your wife's death that really brought that back to you?
Definitely, yeah. I mean, that was the big wake up. That was the, what is this all about? Because what I've been doing for the last 10 years of my post-university life is meaningless. Like, it's not important. In fact, I can remember sitting in a meeting and just feeling quite angry about what people were talking about, because I just thought it was so frivolous and pointless and meaningless. And that's when I realized, if I've got a good reputation here up to now, I better get myself out of this organization before I get kicked out. So that's when I began to, I moved away from that world, and I began to then transition into this different life that I live now. But it was due to that wake up.
Your third book is Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke, and this was published in 1953. You say that you've always been a big fan of science fiction. What was the fascination about this book?
Well, there's definitely parallels. Again, this for me is a book about the evolution of consciousness. That's really what it's all about. It's a great science fiction novel. I have always loved science fiction, and I think it's something to do with just playing with ideas of different realities. There are no rules or laws within science fiction. You can make up all sorts of realities, and so I like science fictions that have strange worlds. So big fan of Philip K. Dick as well, and a lot of his books. And I like particularly science fiction that plays with the rules of cause and effect. So that's one of the reasons why I love Childhood's End, is that it suggests that humanity is on this, or has been on this, evolving journey of consciousness, which really 2001: A Space Odyssey, which actually is my favorite movie of all time, Arthur C. Clarke. That's what that movie's about. The big obelisks appear and they trigger a shift in the pre-human's consciousness. Well, Childhood's End's about consciousness as well, and so we get to this stage where there's a significant and fairly unpleasant, actually, step change in humanity's evolution of consciousness, which occurs to the generation of children that are born after a certain point. And what I love about it is the aliens turn up, which is always great in a science fiction book or movie, but the aliens turn up and they hide themselves from us for, I think it's like 50 years or something like that. And it turns out that they hide themselves from us because actually they look like devils, they look like demons. And so they don't want to terrify the humans by A, turning up as aliens, which is pretty scary, but then B, it's like, hello, and they look like devils and demons. But the reason they look like devils and demons is actually that we have a memory from the future of their arrival. So this is again playing with this idea of time, the arrow of time, cause and effect. So like humanity has this memory from the future of these aliens turning up who look like demons, which is why in our history up till then we've mythologized devils and demons and been scared of them as evil, because actually they're not evil. They just happen to be aliens that are stewarding this transition in our evolution. But it's not a very pleasant occurrence for those people who were left on the planet at the time.
You say that many people view this book as dystopian, but you think it's utopian. Explain.
Well, I do. I mean, yes, it's not very pleasant in that this generation of children basically go through a process of turning into energy, and the Earth is destroyed, and their energy then goes on to the next stage of consciousness. Which, if we as adults were witnessing this happen, and as a father, that would be obviously very traumatic. But it's it's utopian, I think, because what it's saying is that actually, yes, there's a purpose to all of this, which we may not understand, but that it's going in a direction of order, of increased complexity, of kind of superiority, or maybe even perfection at some point. And so, yes, the passing of the human race as we may know it is not a very pleasant thing, especially for those who have to see it happen. But for the generation of children that then go on to this higher level of consciousness, that is I assume, a pleasant thing.
Well, I read a little bit about this, and it says that the overlords appeared suddenly over every city, intellectually, technologically, and militarily superior to humankind.
Yes.
Benevolent, they made few demands, unify Earth, eliminate poverty, end war with little rebellion. Humankind agreed, and a golden age began. Well, that all sounds really, really good. But then it says, but at what cost? Because with the advent of peace, man ceases to strive for creative greatness, and a malaise settles over the human race.
Mm-hmm.
So, we all talk about wanting that golden age to begin. We want peace. We want to unify the earth and eliminate poverty. The question is, what happens when we do? Man's a problem-solving animal. Take away our problems and we get bored.
Well, absolutely, yeah. Which is where there's then a parallel with the next book, I guess, which is Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. So same thing.
Same thing.
Humanity gets itself to a place where there's not any wars anymore. There's no disease. There's pleasure everywhere. You can do anything you want, be anything you want. You take the Soma pills and you're always happy. No depression. But people's lives are meaningless without that part of being human. Part of being human is the suffering, is the sadness, is the needing to strive, is the needing to create and find solutions. So I guess we need to question what is a utopia, what's a dystopia, what one man's utopia is another man's dystopia.
Absolutely. Wasn't this also the theme of the Pixar movie WALL-E? Where everybody, had left the Earth and they're in these floating spaceships and they've all got cool lives and they're wearing their Hawaiian shirts and drinking their, margaritas and asleep.
Yes. Yeah. And that, again, I think we could draw some parallels with the world that we're in now, or the way that, many of us choose to live our lives, and for some of the ways that we occupy our attention, the diets that we have, our emotional diets, our media diets. This is the stuff that I love within the world of sci-fi, is some of these questions.
I think you wrote one of Huxley's main themes is the choice between truth and happiness.
Mm-hmm.
That message is very important right now. We should not give the power to shape the truth to people who offer us happiness in return. Their agenda is not our happiness, it's our compliance. Something we should all
Absolutely.
be paying attention to.
For sure. And we've had warnings in the past from the likes of George Orwell.
Yeah.
One of the other books that I read at the same time, all of these dystopian novels together. One that not that many people are familiar with, but Evgeny Zamyatin's We, who's a Russian sci-fi author, and again, similar kind of themes to Orwell and Huxley. And I think in many ways, if you join those three novels together, there's some interesting parallels with what's going on in the world and the belief systems that exist, and the belief systems, particularly of those in power, and how they would like the rest of us to live our lives.
Yes. It's interesting how this particular novel anticipated scientific advancements in reproductive technology, sleep learning, and psychological manipulation. And if we hark back to the book we discussed before, one wonders whether, they can, and, these books do anticipate the future because they've been there. It's happened before,
Yeah. It has happened before. History is full of these types of examples, and a lot of it's not that long ago at all, actually, and we shouldn't kid ourselves that we've evolved our consciousness to the point where we're immune from that. I do think there are some worrying parallels with the way that many people's beliefs are being shaped and the way in which societies are being divided. I mean, actually, the Brave New World is divided between the people who live the ultra high tech life of endless happiness, and those who live outside of that, the savages, whose lives are kind of miserable and dirty and full of violence, but arguably a lot more meaning. So we should be questioning what's going on at the moment. We should be asking questions about the agenda of the people who are telling us what we should be thinking and doing, and how we should be behaving. So.
Okay, well, let's move on to number 5, which is quite different altogether. A truly groundbreaking book that radically changed our understanding of life. A book I love very much, The Biology of Belief, Unleashing the Power of Consciousness, Matter and Miracles, Bruce Lipton, published in 2005.
Yes, indeed. Yes. So, I mean, one of the reasons I got into HeartMath to begin with is I'm a junkie for the science stuff. And if you combine science and spirituality, then it's even better for me. So I'm a nerd for the science and also the leading edge science. And what I love about this book is it's beautifully written. Although I'm into science, I'm not a one for necessarily being able to understand very dense scientific literature and stuff. So Lipton writes in a very clear way, and I love the way that he explains cell biology. I love the way he explains physics. This guy is seriously bright. He's a former medical school professor and is a research scientist, and everything that he's dedicating his life to has come out of his own discoveries when he was a research scientist. So he basically realized that doctrine of it's all in your genes. Sorry, nothing to do, forget free will, nothing to do with you, it's all in your genes, everything's mapped out for you. He realized from his own work and experiments that wasn't true, and that our genes and our DNA weren't controlling us. But what happens is that genes and DNA actually receive information, and then they respond. So they don't dictate, they receive, and then they respond. And there are many sources of the information that they respond to, and a significant source of that information is our own thoughts and feelings. So literally moment to moment, whatever we're thinking, whatever we're feeling is impacting us on that cellular level, on the level of genes and DNA. So what we're spending our time thinking and feeling and believing and perceiving will have a positive or negative impact depending on the nature of what those thoughts and feelings and beliefs are. So I think that's really empowering, because we have choice around what we think and what we feel.
Yes, we do.
Some people might not realize that or appreciate that, but we do. And when you do realize that, and the more you begin to exercise it, it is incredibly empowering, because then what you realize is, well, I'm impacting my health. and I'm impacting my happiness and my quality of life by being able to regulate my thoughts and my feelings. So we have control over that. Not completely, perhaps, but we have a large degree of control. So yeah, it's a wonderful book, and it's got some lovely examples. I like actually listening to this as an audio book because I like the way that he speaks. One of the few authors probably who I've really enjoyed the audiobook version.
Yeah. What I took from this book, I mean, one of the things that really made me sit up and take notice was his chapters on parents as genetic engineers. And that was just a mind-blowing idea, a concept that, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling is affecting my children on many levels.
Yeah. Well, who was it? Was it Philip Larkin, wasn't it? With the famous poem. I won't say the word, but he said the poem was "They F you up, your mum and dad," and
they never mean to, but they do.
They never mean to. They never mean to. But yeah, their experiences, their lived experiences, the expression of their genes, that can have an impact. It can predispose you, and of course, the way that they then live their lives and behave as parents will have an impact on the children as well. And that's why I think we see sometimes we see these, unfortunately, kind of cycles of chaos in some families and some aspects of society. They just sort of repeat themselves, these cycles. But what is empowering is that those cycles can be brought to an end. I mean, I personally know a number of people, close friends of mine, who had really quite chaotic childhoods, traumatic childhoods. And almost certainly their parents experienced that, and their parents experienced that, which is why it happened. But actually, those people now, they've broken the cycles because they are in control. They can self-regulate. They do not behave like their parents did. They don't make the choices that their parents did. And as a result, they're excellent parents. And as a result, their kids are lovely, well-adjusted kids. And so, the bigger picture then for society is that we do have choice. If we know that we have choice, we can exercise it. And that links with the HeartMath perspective around individual coherence, social coherence, global coherence, creating more order out of chaos, and creating a better world.
Yeah. Well, the next book is different again, As a Man Thinketh by James Allen, first published in 1902. Long time ago.
Yeah, long time ago. I can't actually remember when I first read this one. It was some time ago then, and I can't actually remember who introduced it to me, but I pick it up quite regularly. She's quite small anyway, quite easy to read, and every time I do, I'm really astounded at how far ahead of his time he was. I mean, he was basically the original personal development guru. If he was alive today, he'd be massive. He'd just be multi-millionaire, I'm sure. And it's a book that's jam-packed with powerful statements. And it's all about living life from the heart, and it's about living your life well and living your life with purpose, because of where it comes from and when it comes from. Some people could read it and be put off by some sort of religious or Christian overtones to it, but I don't follow faith, and that doesn't bother me at all. I think the essence of what he's saying is wonderful. It's about mental health, it's about physical health. And the physical side, I think parallels a lot of what Lipson talks about as well. So although Alan didn't understand genes and DNA and expression and all of that type of things, he wrote the book 120 years ago. He's talking about the same thing. So there's a lovely quote that I picked out, which is, "The body is a delicate and plastic instrument which responds readily to the thoughts by which it is impressed, and habits of thought will produce their own effects, good or bad, upon it." True. He just didn't know that it was about genes and DNA and emotions and biochemicals and all of that type of thing.
But I wonder what he did think it was due to. Didn't have the science then, did they?
No. So I'm sure we have more around the spiritual side of things, for sure. Energy and consciousness. Yeah.
Well, book number 6 is a book that I personally like very much, Mind to Matter. The Astonishing Science of How Your Brain Creates Material Reality by Dawson Church. It's just a few years old, published in 2018. Really good book.
Yeah, I love your book. This is another one that I read and I've also listened to on audiobook. I quite like Dawson's voice as well. So yeah, he's so Lipton's focusing more on like the biological impact of our thoughts and our feelings. But what I like about what Church does is he extends that then out into the world and how our minds or consciousness is literally shaping our experience and the environment around us. But he does that again using science. So this is the real reason why I'm into it. So he talks about various discoveries across epigenetics like Lipton does, but also things like wave phenomena, the physics, so electromagnetism, neuroscience, and all of these types of things. And then he brings the science stuff, he brings it to life with lovely case study examples and stories. Some of his own stories, some of stories of people that he's known or he's worked with or whatever. And yeah, I find sometimes when I was going through this exercise, I mentioned that there was some synchronicities and some stuff popped up that I found to be useful with some things that are going on in my life at the moment. And when I read this book, there was a chapter on synchronicity. The subject was synchronicity. And I read this when Syntropy, the app, was becoming a thing in my life. Like it popped up unexpectedly. It was just something that occurred from, some conversations and some meetings and some relationships with people. But what I quickly realized as a result, actually kind of reading the book at the same time, was like, no, what's happening now is synchronistic. This is important, and I need to trust what's happening. I need to place my attention on it, but I shouldn't push too hard with all of this. I shouldn't make my mind up too quickly. Because the chapter explains how important it is to sort of stay in flow and to sort of keep with the frequency and let things flow. So that it was really helpful to me when I was helping to create Syntropy with my business partners. And actually the name Syntropy was a synchronicity as well, because this was before I knew that it was going to be called Syntropy. The name kept popping up in different places, and because I'd read Dawson's book in that particular chapter, it was like, it's come up again. That word's come up again. So I was researching the word and its meanings and its origins and stuff, and that's when I thought, well, this app idea that's popped up, it needs to be called Syntropy. And what's interesting about Syntropy is, this is linking back to the books and science fiction as well, is Syntropy, one of the meanings is about retrocausality. So the future creating the present. Yeah. Instead of the past, cause and effect, the future creates. Yeah. And I really had that sense about the way that Syntropy was evolving, that it was evolving towards something that it was always meant to be, and that exists in the future.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that that whole concept of the future informing the past. One of my favourite books is Future Memory by PMH Atwater, and she shares some of her experiences with stepping into the future.
Right, I'm writing that one down already. Future Memory,
PMH Atwater. Yeah. So let's move on to book number 7, which is Self-Empowerment, The Heart Approach to Stress Management, Common Stress Strategies. That's a mouthful. By Doc Childra, published in 1992.
Yeah, this was the first book that Doc, the founder of HeartMath, wrote. And it is quite a mouthful, actually, that title. At the beginning of the HeartMath journey, Doc was quite a prolific writer. I've hunted down the books. They were quite hard to find, actually, because they weren't in print for long, but he wrote a lot of books. Self-Empowerment was the first one. And actually, I think it's more relevant today than it was when he wrote it. It's basically about managing the stress of our lives. Now, when it was written, 30 years ago, most people didn't even have a mobile phone, and they weren't having hundreds of emails pinging into.
We didn't know what stress was.
We didn't really, not to the extent I think that we do now. Life was challenging then, but it's much more complex now, and yeah, chaotic, challenging, confusing. It's another level, and so that's why actually I think this book is even more relevant now. And I've mentioned before to Howard that I think they should get this book re-edited and get it out there. Change the title probably as well.
Yeah, make it
But
easier.
it's about managing stress through emotional self-regulation. The way that Doc writes is slightly awkward, I find. But having said that, there's just a clarity to it. It sounds like kind of counterintuitive, but yeah, it's slightly awkward, but it just there's a frequency to it that's so clear. And when he writes about things, you just think, oh yeah, that's exactly what it's like. That's that. So this is lovely, relevant examples. Doc writes about emotions and the heart, obviously, as an important source of emotion, but of intelligence and of intuition and of discernment, of ways of cutting through all of this stuff that's going on and interfering with our ability to see things more clearly, and to really get to that heart connection. And so yeah, he writes about all the different emotional traps that we can fall into, and then provides some of the scientific evidence as well, what they knew at the time about heart-brain coherence. Doc was a big reader of some of the science that was around at that point as well. So yeah, it's lovely examples, and then it's practical in terms of techniques, like how coherence can actually help you to learn to cultivate positive emotions and thereby benefit your health and your happiness and make better decisions about your behaviors, your lifestyle, etc. One of the things that really stands out for me though in that book is what he has to say about men. Because what Doc is saying is that men need to change, and I really believe this as well. And I know that my self before my wake up was, in hindsight, fairly chauvinistic and bigoted, actually. If I'm honest with myself, I don't think I was a bad person, but I had those kind of masculine traits, unfortunately. And so what Doc is saying in this book is that men need to be more open. We need to open our hearts. We need to be more sensitive. We need to be more nurturing. We need some of those more what you might traditionally call feminine qualities, but that the world we've created by being the worst excesses of men, male behaviors, competing, dominating, often subjugating or crushing your position, and just accruing power and wealth and all of that type of thing. That really is why we're in the mess that we're in right now. That really is, I think, what is trying to cling on to power right now, because it's crumbling, and it's the last ditch attempt to subjugate and sustain that power.
Yeah.
And so yeah, Doc's talking about needing to change our operating systems. And I know that since I started practicing HeartMath techniques, that I've connected more with my heart, and I am a better and happier person because of it.
Yeah. Just, it makes me wonder, do you have any statistics on, whether male and female use of HeartMath?
I don't have statistics, but I can tell you that anecdotally, it is still more female users than male. Yeah, I think if you compared HeartMath to another modality, I think you'd find that we did have a higher percentage of male users than others, perhaps because of the technology, definitely. But it is still more of a female audience, I think, that we have than male, and that's something that as an organization we need to think about. How do we go about connecting with men and more men, and helping them understand that actually there's a different way of being that can still lead to high performance.
Yes. Well, it's the women, I think, it's the women of the men, that can usually persuade them to try something different.
Yeah, often.
Yeah. Okay, so the next book is another one that I like very much because of the science, by a man who worked on the US government's top secret psychic espionage program known as Stargate. Indeed. So you got to sit up and listen to Dean Radin, who wrote Real Magic, Ancient Wisdom, Modern Science, and a Guide to the Secret Power of the Universe.
Yeah.
What a great title.
It is, isn't it? It's awesome.
Oh, I
Everyone's got
want
to
some
read
of
it,
that.
haven't they? Exactly. Why wouldn't you?
Yeah.
So the first book of his that I read was Entangled Minds, which I
Yes.
absolutely loved. So then, yeah, when Real Magic came out, I obviously had to buy that and read it. And yeah, so basically, it is about real magic. And so what Radin does, and he's a great writer and storyteller as well, is he blends all of the history of what we might call magic with scientific research. And so the research into areas like telepathy and telekinesis and precognition and clairsentience, all of that type of stuff that your ardent materialist and reductionist is just going to turn their nose up at or laugh at or run away from, but of which there is a serious body of research, statistically significant. And so, yeah, Radin writes all about this. He writes with humor, which I always enjoy in these types of books as well. And what's very cool is he's actually got sections in there about how we can activate real magic for our own benefit and our own lives. So things like, how meditation and practices like HeartMath and coherence, any of those types of techniques that basically enable you to go in and quieten things down and then open yourself up to other information that's available out there. Techniques of things like affirmations, repeated affirmations on the intention work, absolutely. And then, yeah, the remote viewing, obviously you've got a bit of a history with that type of thing as well. So yeah, that's what I like about it, is he brings it down into the, hey, look, you can do some of this stuff yourself. Just need to be dedicated to it. But there's, some of the stuff that he includes is very cool, and what I really enjoy, some of the case studies about the people that he purports to have had, incredible abilities, people who could do absolutely amazing and astonishing things. And there are clearly people in the world now and historically who could do things that most people cannot. And those are things that defy the version of reality that materialists hold to be true, and that's why they dismiss them. And so, yeah, things like levitation, manifestation, or whatever, they're certainly not commonplace. But some magic skills are more commonplace, I think, actually, and we see them a lot of the time. So things like synchronicities, and knowing things that you shouldn't know, all of the research about being stared at, all of that type of stuff. Somehow knowing what somebody else is thinking and feeling, somehow knowing what's going to happen next. These are examples of real magic. And so whilst people who can do astonishing things might be very, very rare, there's a bell curve of distribution with all these things, isn't there? There are a lot of people who can do experience them, might not even realize they're experiencing them, but we can all nurture our ability to do that. So
a lot of people dismiss their gifts.
Well, they do. They don't follow their intuition, and then they wish they had, and I wish I'd listened to my heart. You hear people say it all the time. And I know people who've healed themselves from terminal diseases, and their medical professionals don't know how. Just like, wow, okay, amazing. We don't understand it. Move on.
Real magic.
But it's real magic, and those people who've done it, they are people who've dedicated themselves absolutely to these types of practices and techniques, and the power of their belief, their intention. Yeah, lifestyle changes as well, but they have cured themselves of terminal diagnoses. And so, yeah, it's amazing. It's a great book and full of all of the science and research as well.
Yeah. And again, we're pivoting because the next book is quite different. It's Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I cannot tell you how many times this book's come up. There are a number of books that come up again and again, but this one is quite high on the list, and it obviously is a book that really leaves its mark on people.
Yeah, I don't see how you could read it and it not leave a mark, because it's the guy's story of the horrors that occurred in the Nazi concentration camps, and so yeah, it's his description and explanation of how he was able to endure these incredible hardships, physical and mental hardships, and somehow survive when he saw other people around him, many of whom were like physically stronger than him, and on some levels mentally stronger than him. It was too much for them, and they basically gave up, and that's why they died. So when I can remember reading it the first time. I read it a number of times, but the first time just thinking, wow, could I have survived? Could I have done what he did, or would I have been one of the people for whom it was just too much and I gave up? And I really don't know, and I hope to God I never ever find myself in a position where I would ever be tested like that. But I do know that from trauma you can achieve growth, and a lot of the way that we view post-traumatic stress, we focus on post-traumatic stress disorder, and it's how people are damaged from that. We don't focus a lot on post-traumatic growth, but I think that may be as common, or if not more common, than post-traumatic stress, and which kind of destroys people, compromises their lives and their happiness and their health. But people do grow, and I grew as a result of losing my wife. It had a benefit, which might sound like a strange word, but it did have a benefit to my personal evolution. And I have beliefs around reincarnation and stuff like that, and I choose to believe that actually that was a gift that maybe on a soul level she made for my benefit. And so whenever I have other challenges pop up in my life, and there's some stuff going on at the moment that's very difficult to deal with, and is triggering some of these types of memories of my first wife's illness, I kind of recall that, and I recognize that I do have some choice in how I respond and react to these types of situations. So it's a book that provides me with solace as well, and reminds me that life is also about suffering, but suffering doesn't have to destroy you. Suffering can actually make you stronger and benefit your unfolding and evolution.
I think I have actually miscounted. I said that 2 of your books were number 5. In fact, they weren't, because this book is the last one on your list. And I think you had a quote that you wanted to share with us, which I think is really, really important and poignant.
Yeah, there's a couple of Frankel quotes. So when I was flicking through this to write about the 10 books, the copy I've got's got lots of underlined sections, and I was just flicking through, and this one leapt off the page at me, which is everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. And that, a spiritual life, choosing to live a spiritual life means choosing. It's recognizing that we have choice, that we have free will, but some things we may not be able to control, some things may be mapped out for us, but we do have choice and free will, even in very, very difficult circumstances. So then there's the classic Frankel quote, which many people will be familiar with, and which is a bit of a motto for me, which is, between stimulus and response, there's a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. And that's a bit of a HeartMath motto for me, because that really is, for me, what HeartMath's about, is by practicing coherence, you sort of give yourself a bit of a space with all of the stuff that's going on around you. The coherence is what gives you the space, and then if you can stay coherent when all of that chaos is occurring, then you do have some choice about how you can respond. If you don't, if you unfortunately get caught up in the chaos, then you're at the mercy of your emotions, and you're not in control of what you're thinking, feeling, or doing.
Absolutely. Well, that is your 10 best list. In your keywords, you described yourself as a disruptor and an integrator. What are you disrupting and what are you integrating?
I think I'm disrupting in the nicest of possible ways. I would never like to be a sort of a violent disruptor. what am I disrupting? I think I kind of like to disrupt a couple of things. I like to disrupt the way that people think about themselves and the world, but in a gentle way, through introducing them to some of these ideas around coherence and choice and living from the heart and stuff. So that's a gentle disruption. I quite like to disrupt, how we might help people to do that as well. So Syntropy, the app, is disruptive in that there's nothing else like it for a start, but it's using short art and music videos to entertain people, really, but to help them to learn how to practice coherence breath work, or to help them intentionally put themselves in a state of relaxation. And so in a way, I guess that's sort of also disrupting some of the well-being world, certainly sort of the medical perspective on things. You don't always have to take a sleeping tablet or an anti-anxiety pill or antidepressant. There's things that you can do for yourself, and even if you're not able yet to go inside and meditate and do those types of things, then actually just choosing to look at lovely art and listen to beautiful music is a choice, which then enables you to have a physiological benefit and an emotional benefit. So I guess that's where I'm a bit of a disruptor as well.
What about integrator?
Well, I just like to integrate different ideas. So I'm not a one for silos. It's one of the reasons why I like HeartMath is basically an integration of, breath work, positive psychology, a bit like CBT type stuff, and then some technology. Well, breath work exists in its own right. Positive psychology exists in its own right. And there's lots of devices that will tell you what your heart rate is or your heart rhythms are or whatever. But HeartMath integrates all of those things. Syntropy is an integration as well, because really it's a form of focused attention meditation. It's breath work. It's impacting your positive emotions because it's using art and music to do that. It's a bit of art therapy. I mean, you're not creating the art yourself, but you're benefiting therapeutically from the art, and it's a bit like music therapy. So, and it's integrating the coherence breathwork into all of that. So, yeah, integrating in terms of the products that I might dream up. But I like to integrate ideas, and I think when I looked at this list of books, there's all sorts of different types of science fiction, science, personal development, and I integrate all of those for myself, for the way that I make sense of the world, or the way that I try and learn about the world, because I just don't think there's a single truth. It's just not. There's 7.8 billion of us in the world. We all experience a different reality. Truth is probably a integration of all of our experiences and existences and beliefs and philosophies,
and it's constantly changing.
And it's constantly changing.
Yeah. What was true yesterday may not be true today.
Indeed.
Yeah. So tell me about WeAddHeart. What is this?
So I guess that's slightly disruptive as well, but again in a very nice way. WeAddHeart is a growing global movement where small groups of people come together to practice heart-focused meditations. So it's coherence techniques. It's not badged as a HeartMath thing. It's a separate entity, but we're using broadly HeartMath techniques. But the idea is that it's just a way for people to come together in small groups. At the moment, it's HeartMath coaches who are facilitating these groups. So they're reaching out to their friends and their family. Some of them.
But anyone could start a group or join a group.
Not at the moment, but that's actually in my vision, is that we'll roll out, because we don't have loads of resources, we'll roll it out in a way that we can manage it to the HeartMath trained community. So we started with UK and Ireland, and then we've got some of the Greek coaches, German coaches, Dutch coaches, French coaches. The US are now coming on board. They like what we've been doing, and we're working out how to onboard some of their coaches. So it will be growing more and more rapidly. But my vision, which I of course need to talk to my friends in HeartMath about, is how we might make this something that anybody actually could facilitate with some help and some training. But it is actually very, very simple, and we provide we provide a script. If people, we don't have to read it word for word, but we make it so simple for people. We give them lovely branding and materials and how they email or stick it on their Facebook pages and stuff like that. So, you know, as long as someone's got the passion and enthusiasm, theoretically they could. We're not there yet, but that is my vision, that's how we would grow it to be, you know, a very big global movement. And the idea behind the small groups is that, you know, people can get involved. It's not difficult for them. It's not intimidating. You don't have to sit in a meditation with thousands of other people, so it could be more intimate. You know, you'll see the same sort of 5, 6, 8 people each week, or there might be some turnover. But yeah, the idea behind it is that it's creating community at a time when, you know, community's been broken, and you know, it became popular during lockdown. That was when we went online with it. It was physical prior to that, and that's what gave it life. Lockdown actually was what helped it to grow, and lots of our coaches said, I want to do something, I want to get involved. So so we're 30, I think we're 35 countries now, actually. I mean, some of those countries only got one group, but you know, the plan is that we'll keep growing it, and it will grow organically. We don't want to mess with it, don't want to make it complicated. It is about coming together once a month, sitting in a Zoom room with a few other people and practicing some really simple heart-focused meditations and sending love, care, appreciation, gratitude out into the world. Something very simple, very much needed. Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I should have put simple in those descriptions of myself as well. I'm a big believer in simplicity. Okay, so tell me now, what are you reading at the moment? What's piquing your interest? Well, do you know, what am I going to be reading? I've just got this Expanding Reality by Mario Beauregard. Yes. Right. Yeah. It's just got relatively recently just come out. So the emergence of post-materialist science. It's probably pretty clear that I'm a post-materialist and an idealist. So that's what I'm intending on reading. I'm also I've been flicking through for quite some time. Materialism is Baloney by, now I forgot the guy's name. It might come to me in a minute. Anyway, it's not actually an easy read, which is why it's been taking me a while. Mm-hmm. So I've been flicking through that. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to reading this Expanding Reality. And most of the books I read are non-fiction. So before we close, can you tell our viewers how they can find out more about WeAddHeart and Syntropy States? Yep. So WeAddHeart, just simply go to weaddheart.com. And there's a bit of information about it there, and you can search a global map for groups. So you don't have to join a group that's near you. I mean, lots of people intentionally search the map to find a group that's over the other side of the world. That's another nice thing about doing this online. So yeah, welcome to join any group that you like. So that's weaddheart.com. Syntropy, you could either go to syntropystates.com. So that's the website, which explains what the app's about. There's a little video there and stuff, and it explains more broadly who we are and what we do and what our vision is, etc. Or you can actually trial the app for free for 7 days. So if you just go to the Apple or Google app stores and search for Syntropy, 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 then yeah, you can experience it. And then, so basically the idea is it's already got like a library of different videos, beautiful art and music. And what we do is every week we launch a new video. And it's either a coherence breathwork video, or also what we call a relaxed video, which is more abstract art. So every week you get a new video. It's our artwork up to the end of February, but then from the beginning of March, we're working with new emerging artists. And we've got a really exciting launch where we're going to be releasing a video every day for that week. And then going on, there'll be artists from all over the world, all sorts of different types of art, all sorts of different types of music, but it will always be videos either for breath work or relaxation, general meditation that you can use them for. And you are open to receiving emails from people, artists and musicians who might like to absolutely we have an open call anyway. We've already signed up the first 14 artists that we're working with. We're about to onboard the second cohort as well, but we're very interested in hearing from artists and or musicians who like what we're doing and would like to be involved as well. So there's that's open invitation. Best thing to do there is to email me at actually just use my HeartMath email address, gandrews at heartmath.co.uk, or jump on the Syntropy website and there's a link through where you can send us an email as well.
Yeah, well, I'm not getting paid for this, folks, but I do enjoy this app. When my iWatch taps me and says, "Hey, it's time to take a little break."
I'm
It's the
glad you
first
set up
thing I
that.
turn
Yeah.
to.
Oh, cool. Wonderful.
Yeah, it
Glad you
is. I
enjoy it
mean,
so much.
it doesn't take long, and it just gives you those moments where you can just decompress,
Yeah.
which is really
Good idea.
important if you live a stressful life.
Indeed. We
Yeah.
need to be having those moments of decompression more regularly now than ever before as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Gavin Andrews, thank you for adding your 10 best spiritual books to the No BS Spiritual Book Club's library of recommendations. Another mouthful right there. It's a pleasure to speak with you. And if anybody wants to go and have a look at your list, they can go to the No BS Spiritual Book Club.com website and check it out and read more of your descriptions and what those books meant to you. Thank you for joining us, Gavin.
Thank you, Sandie. Thanks very much.
And so, as the spiritual book market becomes increasingly crowded, it is becoming more challenging to sort the wheat from the chaff, which is why we launched the No BS Spiritual Book Club. So if you're looking for recommendations from authors, teachers, speakers, and others who've walked this path before you, check out our free 10 Best Spiritual Books archive at the NoBSSpiritualBookClub.com, where you can also view previous episodes of these face-to-face with interviews. And if you want to save your space at future events episodes each week, sign up using our Save My Space form on the video webpage. And while you're there, checking out what we have to offer, if you feel you have a book in you, but don't know how to start getting it out of your head and into your hands, click on the Work With Me tab and find out how my experience helping others tell their stories might be just what you've been looking for. That brings us to the end of this week's show, which will also be available on all the major podcast platforms as well as YouTube. I'm Sandie Sedgbeer, and I'll be back next week with another 10 Best Spiritual Books interview. Till then, it's goodbye from me.